Okay, we're still waiting for a few people. Sona said that she's going to be delayed by half an hour. I notice Rania is trying to connect. Anyone have any comments? Inner work? Any questions?
Yes. Excuse me.
Hey, hello, Rania. We can't see you, but we can
Yes,
hear you.
I can hear you, but the connection is very bad.
Okay. That's
So
okay.
I'm trying even to connect from my laptop, but it doesn't want to connect. So I'm connecting on my 3G, and this is why there's a lot of disturbance in the line.
Okay. We can hear you, and you can hear us, which is good. I know, someone who's a member of the group, but we've had connection problems. Was hoping to join us today, but I can't seem to get a hold of her. And she's someone, if you've watched online, her name is Allan. She lives in Damascus in Syria, so she's a fellow country person of Sona's, but Sona lives in Turkey. But I'm just trying to see if I can connect her again. But
Sona is also Syrian?
Sona's Syrian, but she lives in Turkey.
Yeah.
She fled the civil war, whereas Iman lives in Damascus. Iman is actually a coordinator for the International Center of Peace. And she was recently given some kind of funding to train other facilitators to bring communities together in peace. I've known Iman. She was a real friend, She lived in Toronto for a few years, and I knew her. And here in Toronto, she was doing the same work. She was getting Christians and Jews to meet in churches and synagogues and Muslims in mosques and trying to bring them all together to see the humanity in each other. And then she was on a student visa and she had to go back to Syria, and the civil war started. And she kind of got trapped there. Any questions about the inner work? How's it going?
It's going very well, actually.
In what way, Anna?
It was Rania, I think.
Oh, that was Rania. Rania, in what way? Sorry.
I think I feel more focused.
Okay.
I agree.
I feel that I'm much more happier and content with the silence. And especially when I observe my breathing, I feel more grounded and more connecting to all of my body and my thoughts. And now I can know what is, or when I am thinking and when I am feeling.
Okay.
At a certain
That's an important one. That's a very important one.
Because at a certain point or a certain time, I sometimes I feel that I was very emotional and my emotions are consuming me completely, and that this is what I am thinking.
Yeah.
But now I can see the difference between what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking.
That's a very important part of the work, to learn to separate the functions. Yeah, so that's wonderful. Yeah.
I agree with Rania, but I think for me it's still work in progress, though.
Yeah.
It's slowly. I could see the difference. I could see that my anxiety level is lower. And I do listen to other types of music now, more meditational music, which is really helping me in addition to this.
Mr. Gurdjieff was asked a question in the late 1940s. So this is a few years before his death. And I forget the question exactly. It was, what do you find most interesting or amazing or whatever about the work? And he said that what he noticed was his depth of sensation continued to increase. This is Mr. Gurdjieff. You would figure he would have, been perfect and complete. years before, but he talked about how his ability to inhabit his body, his depth of perception, kept on deepening and deepening and deepening. So in a sense, the work never ends. He implied that when we finally graduate from the human earth body school, we then move to another level where we continue doing work on ourselves and work for the universe. But that's a long way off. But he said it's like this evolving chain that continues moving upwards. So hopefully we will always be working for the rest of our lives. Movements. Unfortunately, it's something I can't teach. I only took movements for 1 year when I was 49. But the thing about movements, the instructor said that even the best students in movements have to find that line between where they're competent and where they're incompetent. And within the Gurdjieff movements, there is always that line. No one will ever get that good, that they have mastered them and they've made it sort of habitual and it's just something that's automatic. And they always have to strive to find that line between competency and incompetency, because that's where growth occurs. That's where we really begin to change. Any other comments, questions on inner work? Ian?
Well, I had one thing I was going to say, which I'll still say, but first I've been doing, when I have time to do actual exercises, I've been doing the relaxation, the large, medium, and small muscles, and the way that you just quoted Mr. Gurdjieff phrasing it, the depth of sensation. I have noticed an increase in that, my ability to, because I've done relaxation practices for many years in another tradition, and so I'm fairly competent at like feeling a part of my body and kind of helping it to relax a little bit. But lately, the depth of that has increased incredibly.
Yeah.
It surprises me how much sort of the relaxation sinks in and the body feels like heavy, but in a good way. So that's been really interesting.
Mr. Gurdjieff once made a comment that he said, the ability to relax a muscle, to let go of all of the contractions in a muscle, there's a point where you reach the limit. But he said in terms of relaxation, there is no limit. He said relaxation is infinite. And J.G. Bennett, he never explained what they were. Mr. Gurdjieff probably never told him what they were, but Mr. Gurdjieff said that there were 7 levels of relaxation. And the muscular relaxation, the large, medium, and small, is one level of it. And J.G. Bennett implied that there's a relaxation of the nerves, there's a relaxation of deeper and deeper and deeper parts. So it's like an onion. And as you peel away the layers, the relaxation deepens. Now, in terms of the large, medium, and small muscles, this was going back to Paris in the, I believe it's 1943, in those meetings, where he told one of the students there that, relaxing the large muscles are easy, relaxing the medium muscles are a little difficult, but it's very hard to relax the real small muscles. And that's where the real work is required in terms of the 3 levels of relaxation. And I remember when I came across a similar passage years ago, I went to anatomy books and not books, but online and anatomy programs. And I tried to figure, well, what's the largest muscle in the body? The gluteus maximus, our buttock muscle, and and then later on in Paris meetings, 1943, in a meeting, he said the large muscles are the ones we relax first. And the medium muscles are the ones we relax next. And then the small muscles, if we can get past both of those, we can relax those muscles. And that's where the real work is at the present moment, to get those small muscles relaxed. But we can only do it by relaxing the first 2. And then according to J.G. Bennett, perhaps we would move on to nerves, or, you know, maybe the heart and the bloodstream and different parts of the body. 7 levels of relaxation. The muscles are just one. So any other questions, comments on inner work?
There was another thing I was going to say.
Sure.
That, not the decision exercise, but out of the decision exercise, I started to try and put my pants on left leg first. And it's been really noticeable how, like, you know, I'll reach for the pants. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to left leg first. And I go to put them on and the right leg goes in. And I'm like, I was just thinking about it. What, you know, and noticing how much my thoughts and my actions are disconnected. I can be thinking I'm going to do the left leg. And if I'm not really actually paying attention to the body as it's moving and holding that thought at the same time, the right leg's still going to go in.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just been really enlightening how disconnected that is.
Yeah. That's actually a classic example of the fact that we have a head brain, a body brain, and a feeling brain. And part of the body brain is the moving instinctual center. And the moving part of the body brain is responsible for walking, putting pants on. It's learned movements. A baby doesn't know how to put pants on. If you brought someone, you know, out of the jungle wearing loincloths and gave them a pair of Levi jeans, they probably would have a real problem putting pants on at the start, until the body muscles and the body memory, the body brain remembers it. So it sounds like with your head brain, you're aware, I'm going to do it. And then the last minute, the body brain comes in and takes over and short circuits the process. Now, this is a neglected point in the decision exercise. What is your punishment? And the punishment, Mr. Gurdjieff, should be directed at the body, making the body do something. What is your punishment for?
So I figured it should be something with the legs. So I lock my knees in and I stretch because I have really tight hamstrings. Normally when I'm stretching the hamstrings, I go kind of gentle and slow and I try and breathe. And as a punishment, I do 3 sets of just like getting it to the point where it's painful and holding it there and holding my breath until there's some kind of a response from the body of like, and I'm like, okay, I stand back up. And the whole time I'm thinking, you know, remember the pants. I get back up, I do it again. Get back up, I do it again.
Maybe change the punishment. I mean, one of Mr. Gurdjieff's aphorisms, which is not fully explained, do what it does not like. And the it is the body. And what he says is that most people are not aware of how much our bodies control us. And our bodies are sort of the animalistic self. It's a very mechanical part of us. And the body has its own ways of doing things. And we've got to learn how to discipline and control our body, to take control of our body through the use of our intention. And so we've got to begin to discipline it and bring it under control. I would suggest that, you know, maybe change your punishment or maybe increase it. Maybe the body's going, hey, I like this stretching. This is really good for me. You know, this brings me whatever. I'm not sure, but that would be my, you know, just off the top of my head, my recommendation that if you keep on, at the last moment, the body comes in and hijacks it, and it puts in that automatic subroutine, that learned motor skill, that behavior of putting your pants on. The body is somehow going, ha, 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 ha. And you need to gain control of the body a little bit more, and just, you know, work with that. See if doing something else will bring it in line.
You.
Is there any way to sense the quality of force when doing an inner exercise by yourself versus maybe in a group? I felt like I could maybe generate more force in focusing on an inner exercise when it was introduced to me in the group than perhaps when I did when I was by myself.
Yeah. Can you explain what you mean by force?
Sensation, intensity of the sensation.
I mean, there is a certain synergy and a certain energy that comes within a group. And, you know, if you've been in meditation circles and things like that, it makes it much easier. In terms of mindful awareness, I mean, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about bringing our awareness back into this moment, which would be back into our body in this moment. And there's a certain entrainment quality, an entrainment is when you have two tuning forks and you hit one and they're tuned to the same frequency, and without touching the other tuning fork, it begins to resonate. Or if someone, you know, plays a trumpet beside a piano, some of the strings begin to resonate with the sound. And we have this resonant entrainment quality about us. So when you do this with a group of people, there is that resonant entrainment quality. But the group of people and doing it in a communal setting is really like a training wheel. It teaches us what to do. It shows us what to do. It gives us that added force, that added ability to do it. But ultimately, we've got to persevere. It's something that we have to do here and now, wherever we are. The most important thing we can do is to sense our body as often as we can throughout the day. This is just preliminary because this leads to even more refined abilities, but to fully inhabit our body is really important. And the other thing about you know, all of this is that we are three-story beings. So we're not three-story beings, we're actually multi-story beings, but we live in the top 3 stories of our massive apartment complex, so to speak. And for a normal person, the upper floor is the level of personal consciousness, using Mr. Gurdjieff's term, or mindfulness. The middle story is the mechanical level. It's where we exist as automatons and machines. And then the lower level, the basement, is actually where we feed the moon. That's where a normal person connects with world 96 at the level of the moon. And the moon is, you know, this is the rage and the real blind homicidal emotions and the lose-it emotions, the absolute lose-it terror, the lose-it anger, stuff like that. But we have to work 2 different ways. We've got to work by pulling ourselves up from the top. So we've got to work on the mindfulness. We've got to work on continually stretching our ability to be mindful. Some liken mindfulness and this awareness, such as sensing the body, is like a muscle. The more you work it out and the more you go to the gym, so to speak, the stronger the muscle gets and the easier it becomes. But that's working on the problem from the top side. We also have to figure out where we're leaking energy on the lower end. And we leak energy in very specific ways through identification, internal considering, formatory thinking, the associative mind, negative emotions, daydreaming, imagination, lying, and we lie all the time. We just often don't realize that we're lying when we speak as if we know things that we can't possibly know. And I always forget the next one. So, and so we've got to figure out where we're leaking the energy at the lower level. And if we can start to plug that energy and
Blocking the energy? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
if we can start to fix ourselves at the lower level, we free that energy for inner work at the higher level. And the thing is, a normal person, the 3-story being, the lower end is world 96, the middle is world 48, the mechanical realm, the higher is the mindful realm, personal consciousness, world 24. But we can move up a level so that our lower level then becomes the mechanical level, and we're centered in the mindful state. And at the highest level is the level of conscious awakening. And then you could even move up a third or another step up into the be centered in the conscious awakening. And then mindfulness is at the lower level, and something even higher is at the higher level. So it's this movement upwards, and it's all related to the transformation of energies. And it's all related to figuring out where we are leaking that energy that really should be used for higher work. Mr. Gurdjieff says that at nighttime, we accumulate all the energy that we need to do the inner work throughout the day, and then we just dissipate it. We just waste it. And this is why it's also very important to do inner work in the morning. Shortly after we wake up, even 10 minutes, preferably 15, maybe 20 minutes, bringing ourselves back into the body, doing the breathing bit, being aware of feeling, going down into our solar plexus and further down, because that brings in the higher molecules and things we need for the transformation of our emotions, to help us move that octave, the octave of air, up. And when we do the inner work in the morning, if you don't do inner work in the morning, and you can experiment, a day or 2 days or 3 days, do not do any inner work in the morning. And then for a few days, do inner work and notice the effect. Notice how doing inner work in the morning allows you to do more inner work throughout the day. And inner work can be as simple as me right here in this moment, talking to you, but sensing my body, aware of my body from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head. Inner work when I'm taking the dog for a walk and I'm out there and I'm consciously perceiving while sensing my body and aware of the movement of my body. That's inner work. We can do inner work wherever we are. But if we don't have the reserve of energy necessary for the inner work, it becomes more difficult. But doing it in a group really helps as well. There's Sana. Hi, Sana. How are you?
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm fine.
Let's do an inner exercise now. This one I'm going to, this is a slightly different one than any of the recordings that I have. But we're going to start with the self-sensing exercise that we've done before. But I'm not going to move it into the breathing. I'm going to move it into a different way. So the prefrontal cortex, the most advanced part of our brain that allows us to direct our attention. It's what separates us from all other animals on this planet. A chimpanzee cannot become aware of its right shoulder just sitting there. Maybe a fly lands on it or someone taps it, it can be aware of it. But as humans, we have that faculty, that facility, that power of our attention to bring our awareness to our right shoulder. But it starts up in the head, in the prefrontal cortex. Your body was always aware of the sensation of your right shoulder at a deep subconscious level. And now we are harmonizing the conscious and subconscious awareness. So bring your attention to your right shoulder, your right upper arm, your right elbow, and the bend behind your right elbow. And actually, I'm going to start over again. I keep on forgetting this part when I do it online. 3 lines of work. There's the octave of food, the octave of air, and the octave of impressions. And impressions, represent, in a sense, our highest being body, which we can grow. Air represents the Kesdjan body that we can grow as well. And food represents the physical body. And the physical body is made of the earth. I don't own it. I shouldn't think of it as mine. I should not be identified with my physical body. And it belongs to the earth, as Mr. Gurdjieff said. Our essence, our sort of emotional self, our emotional body actually belongs to humanity. It is all human, so we have like a drop of the ocean of humanity that our essence is. But he said that we shouldn't be identified with our essence as well. And then we have the higher being body, which is where the real self is. So when I do work, I like to think of the fact that I am doing this work for myself. And I affirm that I am doing this work for myself. I am doing this work for humanity. And I am doing this work for the earth herself. So I like to think, and I know that by doing inner work, I'm actually working along these three lines, but it's always good to affirm it, at least just as a conscious thought at the beginning of an exercise. It adds a certain resonance to the exercise. So let's just bring our attention to our right shoulder, our right upper arm, our right elbow and the bend behind our right elbow, our right lower arm, wrist, the palm of our right hand, our right thumb, index finger, middle finger, fourth finger, baby finger, the top of our right hand, our right wrist, lower arm, our right elbow, upper arm, back up to our right shoulder, and become aware of our whole right arm. And then divide our attention while remaining aware of our right arm. Bring another part of our attention to our right hip, our right upper leg, our right knee and the bend behind our knee, our right shin and calf, our right ankle, the right heel, the bottom of our right foot, including our instep, our right big toe, second toe, middle toe, fourth toe, baby toe, the top of our right foot, and then moving back up, our right ankle, lower leg, knee, upper leg to our right hip, and then become aware of our whole right leg while remaining aware of our right arm. And while remaining aware of both of these limbs, also divide a part of the attention and become aware of our left hip, our left upper leg, our left knee, the crook behind our left knee, our left lower leg, the shin and the calf, our left heel, the bottom of our left foot, including our instep, our left baby toe, fourth toe, middle toe, second toe, big toe, the top of our left foot, and moving back up our left ankle, lower leg, knee, upper leg, and hip, and become aware of our whole left leg, while also remaining aware of our right arm and right leg. And while remaining aware of these three limbs, bring another part of our attention to our left shoulder, our left upper arm, our left elbow, the bend behind our left elbow, our left lower arm, our left wrist, the palm of our left hand, our left baby finger, fourth finger, middle finger, index finger, our left thumb, the top of our left hand, our left wrist, forearm, elbow, upper arm, right up to the shoulder again, and become aware of our whole left arm while remaining aware of our right arm, right leg, and left leg. Become aware of all four limbs as we slowly begin to move our awareness up the spine while remaining aware of all four limbs. So aware of all four limbs, and bring your attention to the very base of your spine, to the sacral vertebrae number 5. And then we're going to move up the sacral vertebrae to our hip, and then move into the lower part of our back, the lumbar region, and then up into the thoracic region in the middle upper back, and then into the neck. So become aware of the very base of your spine, sacral 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then moving into your lower back, lumbar, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then moving into your middle back, thoracic, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. And moving into your upper back, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then moving into your neck, the cervical vertebrae, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then become aware of your whole spine, as well as all 4 limbs, aware of all 4 limbs and your spine. And then move up into the plates in your skull, the occipital plate at the very back of your skull, the temporal bones at the sides of your skull, the parietal bone at the very top of your skull, the frontal bone in the very front behind your forehead. And then remain aware of all 4 limbs, your spine and your skull. And then bring your awareness down into your eye sockets, down into the roof of your mouth, the nasal passages, down into your mouth where your teeth meet your lips, down into your tongue, aware of your jawbone, the flesh beneath your tongue, and then moving down into your throat, and then your chest all the way along your chest, your solar plexus, your lower abdomen, down into your pelvic region, right down to your reproductive organs. Aware of all 4 limbs, your spine, your skull, the bones in your face, your jaw, throat, chest, solar plexus, lower abdomen, pelvic region, right down to your reproductive organs. Develop the sensation of yourself. Be aware of yourself, your whole self. This is the most important awareness. This is preliminary for everything else. And the reason it is preliminary is because this sensation of self actually belongs in second position. We've got to develop it so well we can hold it in the back of our awareness so that we can maintain this sensation of self in terms of our inner work. If we are not aware of our body, if our body is not in the work, we are not in the work. And it has such importance in the teachings, and we focus on it first because we have to learn how to do it in the background. And it can never be a mechanical act. It always has to be intentional. We have to consciously, with intent and deliberation, become aware of our physical self. And any form of self-remembering, the basic self-remembering is any mindfulness in any 2 brains, as long as one of them is the physical brain. So if we become mindful with our head brain and we are aware of the sensation of self, that is a form of self-remembering. Or if we become mindful of what we are feeling while aware of the sensation of ourself, that is also a form of self-remembering. Though full advanced self-remembering is the 3-brained mindfulness. But in terms of self-remembering, Mr. Gurdjieff said it is very important. So this is the next step. While remaining aware of your body in the background, become aware of your eyes. Sense your eyes. Become aware of your eyes sitting in your eye sockets. And then become aware of your eyes receiving visual impressions. There are 10 million photoreceptors in your eyes, and they're all receiving different vibrations of light. There's a foveal point, which is actually, if you hold your hand out, it's about the size of your thumb. And then there's the peripheral. And, as it gets to the edge of the periphery, it becomes, it's different photoreceptors. But become aware of all of the light coming into your eyes. Paul Beidler, one of Mr. Gurdjieff's students, called this the impartial gaze. So just become aware of your light, or your eyes receiving light, while remaining aware of the sensation of self. And then do your best to remain aware of your eyes receiving light, receiving visual impressions, while also becoming aware of your ears. Really sense your ears, become aware of your ears, become aware of the inner part of your ears, and recognize that there are inner hairs in your ears that are picking up the vibrations, the sound waves coming in, and they're moving and oscillating in a certain way, and they are transforming that sound energy into electrical impulses, into the impressions that feed us. So become aware of what you can see, the light coming in, an impartial gaze, your eyes receiving this light. Then become aware of your ears, that impartial hearing, the sounds perhaps around you, maybe even the sound of your own breathing or the sound of my voice. And while remaining aware of your eyes receiving these visual impressions and your ears receiving the auditory impressions, become aware of your sense of smell. Perhaps smell your own body odor, or if there's anything around you that's distinct, become aware of the smell. Become aware of your nose. And there are certain receptors in the nose and the nasal passage that pick up smell. So become aware of your nose receiving those olfactory impressions. And while remaining aware of this impartial gaze and this impartial hearing and this impartial smelling, also become aware of the taste in your mouth. We all have a taste in our mouth. We just filter it out most of the time, while also remaining aware of the sensation of self, aware of your body. So become aware of the light entering your eyes. Be aware of your eyes receiving this light, your ears receiving the sound, your nose receiving the smell, your taste buds receiving the taste in your mouth, while sensing your body. The impressions that we receive, these perceptions, consciously or mindfully looking, listening, smelling, tasting, are actually supposed to be in first position. They are where we receive impressions, and the sensation of self is there in the background. And this, even though it's a very advanced exercise, is basic self-remembering. Now we can strip it down even more, and you could just become aware of what you are seeing and your eyes receiving impressions while sensing your body, or just become aware of what you are hearing while your ears receive sound impressions while sensing your body, or smelling or tasting while sensing your body. That's an even more simplified form. But we want to do more and more and more complex exercises. We want to find that line between where we can do it and where we are floundering, and continue to push that line further and further. I'm not going to go into it now, but the full self-remembering is to be consciously perceiving with our eyes, ears, nose, and taste buds, while sensing our body, while breathing in a tiny dollop of joy and becoming aware of a highly refined emotion within ourselves. And this is where the breathing exercises come in good, because they help the octave of air transform those higher energies. So just try as best you can to be aware of your eyes receiving light, your ears receiving sound, your nose receiving smells, and your mouth receiving taste, while sensing your body. And according to the notes that Uspensky took, Mr. Gurdjieff said that when we become aware of the eyes receiving visual impressions, he said that, so to speak, we double those impressions. Now, he was speaking slightly cryptically there, because it's not that we double those impressions, it's that we move our eyes up from world 48, from that normal mechanical looking that our eyes are always doing, up to world 24. So at that point, Mr. Gurdjieff defined the difference between these levels, these essence levels or food levels, or these orders of being, as being twice as intelligent, twice as vibrant, twice as refined. So when we consciously look and become aware of the light coming into our eyes, we are doubling the intensity. We are feeding ourselves with hydrogen 24, the planetary realm in terms of the ray of creation. So become aware of your eyes receiving light, your ears receiving sound, your nose receiving smells, your taste buds receiving taste while sensing your body. And this is what we should be trying to do always and everywhere. Myself, the awareness of the sensation of self here in this environment, remembering myself here and now in this moment. They talk about the power of now and being present in this moment. A lot of people online talk about the fifth dimension, and I don't think they have any idea what they're talking about. They're parroting things other people have said. But there's actually a series of 10-minute blogs called Blogging the 10 Dimensions. And when the fifth dimension, I think it's somewhere around 2 to 3 minutes or 5 minutes, maybe it's 5 minutes into that blog, he says that the fifth dimension is a moving point in the now. And so when we bring our attention into this moment, here and now, when we become aware of our body, when we sense our body, when we become aware of what we can see, hear, smell, taste, we are actually entering into that higher dimension, that dimension of now. And it's so easy to get pulled out of that, but this is the immediate goal, to develop this muscle. And through the act, for instance, of consciously, or not consciously, because consciousness is really the next level up, mindfully perceiving with our eyes, ears, nose, taste buds, while sensing our body, and then bringing in the feeling brain. This, doing it with all three, is high man number 4 capability. So they talk about man number 1, man number 2, man number 3. Man number 4 begins with the act of self-remembering. And the ability to do the 3-brain self-remembering gets us to the highest point of man number 4. So this should be our goal, this ability to develop this muscle, to just sense our body, to be aware of the light coming into our eyes, the sound into our ears, the smell into our nose, our taste, while sensing our body. And, step by step by step, building this up. And then at the start, you may find it easier to do it in a chair, to do it in the morning, to do it quietly. But it's something that we then have to take out into the world. My favorite place to self-remember is when I take the dog, and I know if I'm say the word walk, he just looked at me. His head just went up. He knows the word walk, and he's going walk. Let me see there. Walk.
Fire! Fire!
So I love doing it when I'm out walking, becoming aware of my body. becoming aware of the sky and all of that. I have a meetup group called Toronto Mindfulness Walk, where I teach them and I narrate this process as we're walking. So to be aware of our body, and hopefully you're continuing to try to be aware of your body, try to be aware of what's coming in through your eyes, ears, nose, taste buds. But if it's too much, fall back into the body, develop that sensation of self, grow that awareness, grow that muscle, be in your body, sensing yourself. And there he is, saying hi. Yeah, you just heard that word too many times. Okay. So let's just, again, become aware of your eyes receiving visual impressions and our photoreceptors in the eyes transform the energy into electrical impulses. What we're perceiving is actually the electrical impulses in our brain. And it's this transformation that feeds us with impressions. Our ears also, the sound gets translated into electrical impulses. Our nose, our taste buds. So become aware of the impartial gaze, the impartial hearing, the impartial smelling, the impartial tasting, while sensing our body as one organic whole. And build this muscle, work on this muscle. It's very important. A lot of traditions, particularly the Buddhist tradition, they teach one-pointed mindfulness. For Mr. Gurdjieff, it was all about building up more and more and more and more layers of mindful awareness. One of his students, Willem Nyland, really stepped on the word simultaneity. And I have expanded it to kind of explain it, and I call it the simultaneity of mindful perceptions. What can we become aware of simultaneously here and now in this moment? Well, our vision, our hearing, our smell, our taste, the sensation of our body, and our feelings are all different layers of perception. And the more they all align here and now in this present moment, the more real we become. And as the title of one of Mr. Gurdjieff's books, even though he didn't write it, it was compiled after his death, life is only real then when I am. This is how we make ourselves real. So just bring yourself back to your visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory impressions while sensing yourself, sensing your body as one organic whole. And then just allow your attention to rest and become aware of the fact that as the earth has an atmosphere, we too have an atmosphere that surrounds us. Become aware of this atmosphere around us. Become aware of the border of this atmosphere and keep it about a meter, meter and a half. And try to keep your atmosphere calm, still, tranquil. And the way we do that is by keeping our mind calm, still, tranquil. No associations. Try to keep it from thinking those associated thoughts. Keep your mind tranquil. Keep your sensations tranquil. And keep your feelings tranquil. Keeping that atmosphere tranquil and collected. And some of the inner work that we did today is contained within our atmosphere. And so I'm going to count from 1 up to 3. And when I get to 3, just breathe it in. And then as you breathe out, imagine, represent to yourself that some of the work you breathe in and it stays within you in order to help facilitate this higher work. 1, 2, 3. Breathe it in, and then as you breathe out, imagine some of it remains. And then let's just finish with an affirmation. And repeat this one in your mind after me. May results from this exercise be transubstantiated within me for my being. And, as I've said before, Mr. Gurdjieff said, when we do inner work, particularly on our own, it's good not to rush off and to spend 10 minutes remaining in a quiet state, because he said the emanations that we created through the inner work then have the opportunity to settle within us. So, any comments, any questions, any observations?
I don't want to sound like a lunatic, but doing the inner work, I feel like a warm sensation in my mid back, and when reaching the head, almost like noticing saliva is more nourishing, and the glands in the brain too.
I don't think that's a lunatic comment, but I think it's an interesting comment. You haven't done Gurdjieff inner work, but you were involved with Zen.
Yes.
So you've done meditation, and you've done a lot of the mindful breathing.
Sessions, yeah, days. For about 6-7 years, that was, to a point it was an hour in the morning and an hour at night. So I got a little zealous, toward the end a little bit, but I backed off for maybe like a year or two now to try to bring it more in my life, and it simultaneously went with me doing more things in my career, my life, and having more responsibilities.
You do some kind of, I forget what it was, body work?
Yes, I do. Yeah, structural.
Structure.
The cranium, mobilizing cranial bones, and myofascial releases in the body.
Is it like Rolfing?
It's like Rolfing, but it's the results tend to be better, and there's a component that is not available to Rolfers that has to do with mobilizing the cranium beyond cranial sacral restrictions, where cranial sacral usually works within certain restrictions, and this kind of work, you're bringing it beyond that restriction and creating structural changes in the actual body.
I mean, as a practitioner, you have a wonderful opportunity to do inner work when you are working with clients. If you're thinking about the TV show you saw and the argument you had when you're working on them, you're not really working on them.
Right.
You've got to be present in this moment. So it's the same with me. Even though I'm a hypnotherapist and talking a lot and everything, I've got to be present. The more present I am, the more effective I am. And so you have an advantage by doing that, by really coming into your body. And the awareness of the heat in your lower back, is it where your kidneys are?
No, it's above it. It's in my thoracic, almost behind the diaphragm, and it's warm.
And then up, what's it up into the head?
And the head, it's in the brain, the glands.
What do you mean by the glands?
Pineal, hypothalamus.
Oh, the pineal? Okay.
Yeah, kind of. And I feel like it's connected to the saliva, to the actual salivation process. Okay. Yeah.
I've never paid attention to that, but that's a very interesting awareness. This work has to affect the pineal gland. All inner work has to affect the pineal gland, and so the fact that you're aware of it is interesting.
Yeah, that's from the Kundalini yogis, some that I've met. They're very attentive about saliva. It's pretty interesting, and tongue posture. But about the work, I would mention I went into that field for that reason.
Okay.
So I could remember myself better. from getting it done on me and from doing it on people.
Yeah. A lot of people who get attracted to the work, particularly at a young age, end up becoming some kind of, natural healthcare therapist, massage or body work or all sorts of different things. It's like we're drawn into the healing profession because in part it allows us to heal ourselves and bring that awareness into ourselves as well. Any other questions? Any other comments?
Yes, I'm so much aware of inside my brain.
Inside your
My brain.
brain, okay.
I feel that I can feel inside my head. And actually, when you said you were a hypnotherapist, you have a very distinguished and deep voice. And somehow it affects me, not in a bad way.
Yeah. I've developed this over 30 years, but yes, I do.
And when I listen to you, I like it because in a way, it makes me feel calmer. And when you say you can access this finger, I can literally go to this finger or this toe.
Yeah.
And so I feel I'm more aware of my body. And maybe you should give us a hypnosis course as well. Because
Yeah. Hypnosis is very interesting, and a lot of it's with voice and voice modulation and not speaking normally, but speaking with the rhythmic quality. And so doing the inner work, become aware of your right shoulder, your right upper arm. There's actually a wave-like quality to my voice that has a hypnotic element to it. That allows us to access a deeper part of ourselves. So,
okay.
And you mentioned fingers and toes.
Yes.
This one, we seem to be focusing on inner work. Mr. Gurdjieff said that we receive energies from the universe. There's something called the 4 ideals exercise. I'll go into that in some later meeting. But, he said, perhaps imagine Jesus above Jerusalem, Muhammad above Mecca, the Buddha above India, and Lama above Tibet. And each one of them, we go to not quite where they are, but to the level below them. And we receive the influences of each one in a particular limb. But he said that we receive impressions through our hands and our feet. And we receive them through our fingers and our toes. So they don't really say why, but a lot of people in the Gurdjieff movement say it's very, very important to learn to sense each digit individually. This is why I've got a 60 bone exercise that comes from Paul Beidler, where we just go through, we say the holy affirming, holy denying, along, the holy affirming, the 3 bones in our thumb, the 3 bones in our hands, because it's important to learn to distinguish them all. And for me, the part that I had the real most difficulty, and I understand it in terms of anatomy, is between the 4th and the 3rd toe. The 4th and the middle toe. You move one and the other moves. They're kind of linked. But we have to learn to consciously differentiate the sensation of our baby toe, our 4th toe, our middle toe, our 2nd toe, our thumb. So this is all very important. Just so when I'm narrating it and going through, it's wonderful that you're able to differentiate. This is a preparation for more advanced work, to be aware of these receptors, so to speak, of a higher energy. Any other questions? Any other comments?
There were a few moments during the exercise where I noticed that I was able to hold the sensation of self, the body, and tune into the present moment, and the sensation in the body seemed to ramp up. More electrical, kind of a buzz, and then I would lose it, you know. So maybe I would lose the sense of the body, and the buzz would go away, or I would, you know, have not really be tuning into the visual or the audio. It's sort of almost an echo of it, and I would lose that. But that was really interesting. In the past, when we've done this, and when I've done this, it feels more like just a struggle between holding the body and holding the senses. But today I noticed this increase in the sensation based on really being tuned into what I was receiving.
How many of us in this moment are aware of our body?
I am. I don't know. Should I raise my hand?
Oh, what did you say, Allan?
How many of us are aware of our body? You know, by saying it, you become aware of your body. But how many of us were a second before I said it, aware of their body, you know, into sensation? I mean, being a hypnotherapist, I understand the power of words. So when I talk about being aware of my own body, being aware of my body from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head, that we all become aware of our bodies. We're reminded to be aware of our bodies. This was something I learned from studying the teachings of Milton Erickson, a very, very famous psychiatrist, medical doctor, and he created a whole branch of hypnosis. Reading, I'm convinced he studied the Gurdjieff teachings. Apparently Milton Erickson had a copy of the Beelzebub Tales to his grandson on his bookshelf when he died. He uses the word associations exactly the same way Mr. Gurdjieff did. And he was very much in the awakened state when he did hypnosis. And he said that, you know, whenever he gave a talk and he started talking about his mother and how he remembers, you know, the farmhouse in, you know, the Midwest where he grew up, and his mother in the kitchen, and, you know, the look of his mother and the way she moved, that everyone in the audience was thinking of their mother, and an image or some kind of representation of their mother was coming up. And so just by talking about the awareness of my breathing, just by saying, you know, I'm noticing a little tension in my lower back right now, we all become aware of our body. And the thing is, right now in the context of this meeting, we're all in a slightly higher state. We're all in a mindful state. It's like we've been primed. And even though we're all around the world, and, you know, Egypt, Turkey, Mexico, Brooklyn, Florida, Portland, Oregon, Toronto, we're all doing this together. And there is some kind of quality that comes from doing it together. So just by talking about it, by being here, we are naturally lifting ourselves up. But this is something, as I said, we have to take out into our life and into the world. One of my favorite sayings of Mr. Gurdjieff is, remember yourself always and everywhere. So, you know, this is the goal. And, you know, it's done through increments. We can't learn to run before we learn to crawl. We can't learn to walk before we learn to crawl. We've got to learn to crawl first. And then before we can even learn to crawl, we've got to learn to push ourselves up and sort of roll around. And then eventually we begin to crawl, and then eventually we stand, and eventually we walk, and eventually we run. And it's the same with inner work. We're all at different levels here, so to speak. Both Ian and Jonathan, you know, got extensive sort of Buddhist background with, you know, the Buddhist techniques. Ian spent, you know, going to retreats for months. So, and I don't know if you've done retreats, Jonathan, but just 7 years of, being in that world. So they bring a certain bias, and part of what they have to do is break out of that and begin to, perceive, look, listen, smell, taste, sense, and feel, and bring it all together. Wherever we are, not just sitting for an hour, but taking it out into the world. The reason why it's a good idea to begin the day with a morning exercise, to begin the day particularly with self-sensing, and then breathing in those higher molecules that we need for the transformation of the octave of foods. So doing the exercise that I call the morning exercise that's on my channel is a very good way to begin the day. But the reason it is a good way to begin the day is, while we start in the collected state when we wake up, it's easier to do in the morning. But this gives us higher energy, higher fuel to take out into the world and to be mindful, to live in these higher states more and more throughout the day. And that's the goal. The goal is to remember ourselves always and everywhere. But, we've got to begin with baby steps. We've got to begin by finding that point where we're completely competent and we're completely incompetent, and finding that line and being on that line and then pushing that line. So for Ian, one of the places where that line exists is putting his pants on in the morning. And it's because, and the fact that you're failing is good, and that partly succeeding. If you always succeeded, it wouldn't be a challenge, it wouldn't be a struggle. And, conscious labors and intentional suffering are the most transformative elements in the universe, particularly for us. And within the Gurdjieffian tradition, positive, negative. The head is the positive, the body is the negative. The head is the representative of the holy affirming, the body of the holy denying. And between those, we grow the holy reconciling. And so we want to be between the positive and the negative. And the positive is conscious labors, and the negative is intentional suffering. It's like the polarity between those two. So to consciously labor, to consciously try to put your pants on differently, and then to consciously and intentionally suffer when you don't. There's a transformative element in that. So putting ourselves in situations where we suffer is very important. Years ago, when I first came back to Canada, I was kind of broken. And this is, going back 16 years. And I tried to apply for all sorts of jobs, and I actually had to start taking things off my CV. And I ended up getting a job overnight as a security guard in a chemical factory. And the amount of suffering that created in me, and then just the exhaustion I felt when I got home. And I was living with my brother at the time, and it was like an hour and a half on public transit to get home in the morning. And I was exhausted, and I would make myself walk around the building 3 times and rub my face in the suffering just to get to the point where it didn't bother me. Another exercise that I did, I used to, we have subways, undergrounds, metros. We call it the subway here in Toronto. And they've got a very distinctive chime, ding, 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 when the door closes. And I would hear the subway pull in, and I would become like a demon, flying down the stairs, flying into the door. And if I missed it, it would be like, hurrah! And so what I did was I would fly down the stairs, I would get onto the platform, and then I would let the door close. in front of me and I would catch the next train. And the suffering, and I got to the point where it didn't bother me anymore. So I gave myself all these little tasks to increase my suffering. And that's actually, on one level, it's a conscious labor. To do that, I have to consciously say, no, I'm going to stand here and let the door shut. And I would do that for the bus as well. I used to run for the bus, and then it would just pull out. And I would run for the bus, and then I would let it go away. And, you know, at 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning on a Sunday morning when it's minus 15 degrees outside, then the next bus is 15 minutes. There's a degree of suffering involved in that when you're dead tired and you just want to go home and go to bed. And, you know, to find these places where we can create this friction in our lives and to increase the friction. And we can, you know, where our negative emotions lie. You know, if we get angry, I mean, for me, it was impatience. Impatience is a form of anger. So where I would find my impatience boiling over, so to speak, that's where I had to rub my nose the deepest in that so that the impatience was diminished. So whatever our negative emotions are, you know, anger, fear, or despair. You know, anger is the opposite of love, which is more cerebral, more head brain. Fear is the opposite of peace, which is more body brain. And despair is the opposite of joy, which is more feeling brain. And to focus on where we notice our negative emotions, where they are most pronounced. What is it? For me, impatience was a big one. And the struggle to grow patient. I still have moments of impatience, and it's like, here I am, you know, all the way back there, and breathe into it and just, you know, let it go. But to find those emotions and to use those points as points of friction, as points of suffering, very useful to the work. Any other comments? Any other questions?
This was very interesting.
In what way? I'll put her on the
Yeah, I was actually, as you were speaking, in America, usually everything has to be easy. Everything, it was very different from, you know, my background, which everything was the hard way. Everybody got up very early, you know, dawn, and it was a lot of hard work for adults, and children had their chores as well. Whereas in America, everything was, you know, people were isolated, but everything was easy. Even school, everything is pretty much, you know, it was given to you. You didn't have to really try hard. And then you become lazy, I think, as a result too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, you know, when your ideal is the pursuit of happiness, that's inevitable. Mr. Gurdjieff, you know, subtextually in Tales, had a lot to say, not just about America, but about the whole issue of human rights, because human rights should be balanced with human responsibilities. And if you just focus on the pursuit of happiness, you completely blind yourself to the transformative power of suffering. And so, you know, designed to make life easier and easier. And, you know, on Facebook, people post, you know, little videos or pictures of these machines that take away a lot of the drudgery of life. And I'm thinking, no, the drudgery of life is important. It's important. You know, I don't have a dishwasher. I wash my dishes. You know, it's important to do that. It's important to vacuum. It's important to do all of that work, but not to do it as drudgery and with the negative emotions, but to try and do it joyfully, with that joyful awareness. Mr. Gurdjieff, you know, every once in a while, you know, some aristocrat would come, and, you know, he would get them scrubbing floors. And these were people who had probably never dressed themselves in their lives, scrubbing floors and peeling potatoes. And he would get them enjoying it so that they had an appreciation of the value of taking care of themselves. He said that a person who cannot take care of themselves is not a real person. And we've got to learn to look after ourselves, and not just to do it with drudgery and all of those negative emotions, but to figure out what those negative emotions are. For me, it was impatience, but it could be despair, or it could be anger. Why am I doing this? Or, you know, various different reasons. And to realize that those negative emotions are showing us where we need to work and the part of ourself that needs to be refined. Now, the thing about negative emotions is they occur in world 48, the mechanical realm, the habitual realm, and in world 96. In world 96, they're like the homicidal emotions, or the emotions that want us to just disappear and annihilate ourselves, or the fear. So when they're in those lower levels, we are unable to be reflective. We don't have that higher energy with them. And so they show us where we're leaking, where we're broken. And we've got many of these emotions. By isolating each one separately and turning them into a task, this is, you know, to not allow those emotions to arise, to realize the trigger situations, and then to rub our nose in those trigger situations so that we learn to consciously suffer, and we learn through this conscious suffering to transform this energy so that we can use it for the development of our being, to grow ourselves at the higher level. Any other questions, comments? No?
Actually, that was very interesting. For example, for me, fear of something in the past, you know, coming back into the future is negative energy that somehow I tend to just get stuck, and emotionally it just hurts.
Yeah.
But I hope that one day I'll be able to really transform that energy.
Yeah. Is there any way you can put yourself in a situation that provokes fear without being in danger? Fear is a difficult one and a tricky one in that respect. Are you afraid of heights?
No.
No, okay, because then, you know, go up to a tall building and lie on the roof and look over, and, you know, just...
That's fine.
That's fine. Do you have any unnatural
noises? Usually the noises. If I hear a scream or a loud noise, I jump, and then the whole day is just ruined.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what you're doing, the energy is just being exploded. You know, that energy that we could be using to work, it's just like, you know, this gas and dropping a match and poof.
Yeah.
So that's why for the rest of the day, you're affected. One of the best ways of dealing with that is through hypnosis. Going back and finding the cause of the fear, reawakening the memory of the original moment of fear, of feeling that fear, and then transforming it, detaching from it, turning it into a second person memory, growing the memory. But that's something we can't do in an online group and online. But, you know, try to sit in the fear when you feel it. You know, if a loud noise goes off and it provokes the anxiety response, you know, it eventually gets your adrenal glands pumped and your body is flooded with all these fearful biochemicals and hormones. Just to try and sit in that would be a preliminary step. Just to say, to consciously recognize it, I am frightened right now, to bring it up into that level of mindful awareness. My body is reacting this way. My body is being flooded with these chemicals. This is happening to me here and now in this moment. Preliminary step, baby step. Any other comments before we go? No, okay. It's almost noon. So thank you all for coming, and keep up next week at the same time. So, this time, now that we've moved back into daylight savings time, I think actually in Turkey and Egypt, it's different, and also in Colombia it's different, but for the rest of us it's all the same. It was 10:30. How's the weather in Turkey, Sana?
It's a little bit more warm now, but I think it's gonna get colder.
It's gonna get colder?
Yes, but now it's warm.
It's warm. Is it shirt weather and short sleeves? Yeah. What about in Harania? I guess your microphone's off. What's the weather like in Cairo?
Well, it is a bit warm in the morning and cold at night, but for you it won't be cold at all. You will still be wearing your t-shirt. Or like Jonathan. Just walk around
like Jonathan, down in Florida in the Panhandle or the Gulf Coast on Florida.
It's like 23 in the morning and afternoon, and then at night it's like 15, 16.
Okay.
Which is
23 is like 73, 74. And 15, 16 is like about 65 for those of Americans. Fortunately, in Canada, we've got, I grew up under the imperial system, but they turned metric when I was 18. So, I'm sort of both of them. I prefer metric, actually. It's more understandable to me now. Okay, I would like to thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
And bring this energy into the rest of your day. Remember yourself always and everywhere. As much as you can, even if it's just, your right thumb. Whatever you can, as much as you can, find that level where it's easy and then it's difficult, and try and sit in that level. Okay, thank you all. Take care, and we'll see you again next week. Bye now.
Bye.